And hello everybody, and welcome to the Movie Pit Podcast. I am your host, Christian. This is, of course, the podcast where we talk about all of the latest breaking big movie news items of the week, as well as the trailers that came out this week, and as well as the movies that are coming out in theaters for all your viewing pleasures. Like I mentioned, I'm your host, Christian, and I just want to full on, right from the bat, apologize for there not being any podcasts for, I want to say, the last 3 weeks? Something like that? Yeah, it's been probably 3 weeks. I want to apologize for that. That is not, and that was not my intention whatsoever for having that long. I mean, once you miss one, it kind of becomes a habit, and I apologize for that. Although, in my very, very small defense, the last couple weeks have been a little dry in terms of movie news, so I'll just use that as an excuse, but I do want to apologize for that because obviously, like I mentioned, once you miss one, it becomes kind of a habit, and I don't want it to become a habit, especially now that we're getting near the tail end of the year. It's already November. So first of all, hopefully all of you had a happy and safe, fun Halloween. Of course, for all my Hispanic and Latino listeners, it is Dia de los Muertos. And for all you non-Latino listeners, Dia de los Muertos is not Mexican Halloween. Please stop referring to it as that. But I just want to apologize for that. It's just been kind of a little hectic on my end for some crazy, unknown, specific reason. If you follow my personal Instagram and Twitter, you knew that I was out of town this previous weekend. I went to Universal's Halloween Horror Nights, which was a lot of fun. And then the week before that, I just got kind of busy. And then the week before that, I was just having some troubles, some more personal troubles. But I'm back. The podcast is back. I don't want to ramble, although, again, this week is very slow in terms of movie news, but I'm going to make it up to you guys. Because I was in LA, I actually went to the movie theaters out there. It's kind of my weird little thing. I like to go to movie theaters in different towns I visit just because I'm, again, weird like that. But because I was in LA, I got to see JOJO Rabbit before it came out wide all across the country. So I'll be giving you guys a little review of JOJO Rabbit at the end of the podcast. So let's get to the podcast, shall we? Let's get to everything. So we're going to start off with the trailers that came out this week. So let's just move on to that, to trailer talk.
Coming soon to theaters.
So the first trailer we're going to talk about is the new trailer, the reboot to the remake of The Grudge. That's directed by Nicholas Pesh. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. I don't know. He directed a movie called The Eyes of My Mother. In the movie, the reboot, The Grudge, stars Andrea Riseborough, I think that's how you pronounce her name, or Riseborough. I can't pronounce her name. I love her as an actress. I just can't pronounce her last name. She was in Mandy recently, which I know everyone loved. She was also in Birdman. My first exposure to her was Oblivion, which was the Tom Cruise movie. But she plays a detective investigating a grisly crime in a home that manages to leave a mark on its inhabitants. The reboot will take the action from Japan to the US and will follow 3 different storylines which follow 3 different sets of residents that lived in the house. And the director, I'm not going to pronounce the last name again, has been quoted that the reboot will be, quote, fucked up. And take that as you will. The Grudge co-stars Betty Gilpin, who is probably mostly well known for Netflix's Glow, Damian Bashir, who was seen last year? I can't remember now. In The Nun, he was in that. John Cho's in the trailer. Looks like he's going to play a big part, or at least a semi-big part in this. Jackie Weaver's in there. William Sadler's in there. And, of course, Insidious fan favorite Lin Shaye is also in the movie. The Grudge will open on January 3rd of next year.
Hello, it's Peter Spencer.
I'm here about selling the house.
Is anyone home? Hello?
This is Detective Muldoon.
This is Peter Spencer. Something happened to me at 44 Rayburn Drive.
Someone was murdered at that house.
Why did you never go into that place?
Something never felt right about it.
Looks like we got another one.
Do you think that the body we found's related? Hello? I went to the house. Hello? Police department. I think something followed me home.
Mommy, what's going on? What's wrong?
We need to leave right now.
I don't know how I feel about this new reboot that they're doing. I am familiar with the director. Like I mentioned, he directed The Eyes of My Mother, which I happen to see. I'm pretty sure it's probably streaming somewhere. You could probably find it somewhere. It's a kind of black and white. It's not kind of a black and white. It is a black and white kind of horror thriller. And it's a very kind of slow burn movie. It's not one of those, it gives you, these big horror movie jump scares and stuff like that. No, it's a very slow burn, methodical kind of movie, and it's subtitled, but it's I think it's in Portuguese, so you will have to read subtitles unless you can find a dubbed version out there. But I kind of liked what he did for the most part in The Eyes of My Mother. It's not one of my favorite slow burn horror movies out there, but when I found out that he was directing The Grudge, I was like, at least maybe the visuals will be really cool. And from the trailer, it kind of seems like that. Again, I'm just not totally convinced in another Grudge reboot movie. I liked the remake they did with Sarah Michelle Gellar, which was, I think it's like 2004, 2003, because the Japanese one came out in 2002, right? I think so. I think I got my years right on that. But I like that one. Even the sequel that came out with oh wow, I can see your face. I can't think of their name, but I even like that one. And then I think they made like 2 more straight to DVD. I mean, it's a good property to have, and of course the Grudge movies, if you're familiar, they that along with The Ring started the whole remakes of Japan horror movies here in America. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this. I mean, there's a lot of great people in here, but I'm not completely sold on it just yet. So that's just my thoughts. All right, so the next trailer that we're going to talk about is the final trailer that came out this week, or at least the final trailer we're going to talk about this week. There's a couple other trailers that dropped this week that we'll link down below in the description / show notes comment, in the show notes area, like I always do. See, this is what happens when you take off a few weeks. You just start stuttering everywhere. So the final trailer for Jumanji: The Next Level came out. That's what we're going to talk about. The movie finds Spencer, played by Alex Wolff, who disappears, and his friends, once again played by Morgan Turner, so Darius Blaine and Madison Eisman, return to Jumanji to save him. However, the game they once knew is now broken. And not only do their friends go into the game, so do Spencer's grandfather, played by Eddie, or named Eddie, played by Danny DeVito, and his friend Milo, played by Danny Glover, get sucked into the game as well. Also returning are, of course, Dwayne Johnson, who is doing his best Danny DeVito impression, Karen Gillan, Kevin Hart, Nick Jonas, Jack Black, and also coming back are Rhys Darby, and new cast members include Awkwafina, who is in the trailer, although I don't think we hear her talk in the trailer, but she is there.
Where's the jungle? This is a whole new thing. Nobody told us we had to do a whole new thing.
Okay, something went wrong.
Come on. I'm coming.
Grandpa Eddie?
Come on in.
Did you guys see Spencer?
Who's that? I think he went back in. We gotta go get him.
You hear something?
We haven't even picked our guys yet.
Are we in Florida?
Oh my God.
Wait. We're in the wrong body!
My joints feel like butter.
Oh, no. I feel loose myself.
This can't be happening! I came back and things actually got worse.
Look at this. 1, 2, 3.
We have some issues here. The game is busted.
Listen up now. This is a dangerous place. You got to have eyes in the back of your head.
What in the Sam hell just happened to him?
What the hell is this?
Would you look at me? I haven't looked like this since...
Never. You look like this never.
I think my eyes are a different color.
All of you is a different color.
Check this out. Strengths and weaknesses. Linguistics.
Oh, goodness.
Nunchucks. That's new.
Damn, that's a good list.
Weaknesses, heat, sun, and sand. How is this guy a character in an adventure game? Man, it is hot out here.
We have to find Spencer and Bethany.
This next adventure is even more challenging. This time, not all of you will leave the game alive.
Bethany thought you might need some help.
Where is Bethany?
She's right here.
She says, oh my God, like I'm a total horse.
Yep, that's Bethany.
Hey.
You are a terrible driver.
What are you talking about? I just passed my driver's test last month again.
We're not going to make it.
We're gonna make it.
I don't think we're going to make it.
We're gonna make it. We're not gonna make it.
What happened?
Yes, I'm back. I missed you so much. Oh my God, you guys, hi.
Bethany?
You guys, we're back in Jumanji.
I was a fan of Jumanji, Welcome Back to the Jungle, or Back to the Jungle, something like that. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was good. I thought it was funny. I thought the cast dynamic was great. And then when I found out they were doing a sequel, I wasn't really surprised. And the first trailer was really good. I thought it was interesting. I liked the whole, Dwayne Johnson doing his best Danny DeVito impression, and then Kevin Hart is, deepening his voice to play Danny Glover, or impersonate Danny Glover. I thought that was really cool. But I don't know. I kind of like the other trailer as opposed to this one. This one's good. It gives you a lot more, of the movie. You realize they're out of the jungle and they're in the desert. It looks like they're in the mountains at some point as well. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm not gonna get too crazy about it. The first one was very welcoming, so hopefully the second one is just as good as the first one. Visual wise, it looks like they really upped the ante on this one, but I'm hoping that it's probably still gonna be a lot of fun, but hopefully it's as fun as the first one. Alright, so those are your trailers that came out this week. Jumanji, The Next Level, and The Grudge. There's another trailer that came out this week that I will link in the description/show notes area. It's coming out as I'm recording. I just see it over here in my little news ticker, so it's going to be down there for you guys to watch as well. And by the way, Jumanji, The Next Level opens later this year, December 13th. Alright, so let's move on to this week's movie news items, but first we're going to take a quick look at some of the smaller news items in what I like to call Quickfire. There's only really 2 Quickfire movie news items. Like I mentioned, it's kind of slow, and I really don't have too much to say about these particular news items. So the first one is that Bohemian Rhapsody producer Graham King is working with Paramount Pictures to produce a biopic on the iconic disco pop trio, the Bee Gees. Because if it worked for Bohemian Rhapsody and it worked for Rocketman, why not do more biopics on groups? And the Bee Gees, sure, why not, right? All right, so the next quick-fire movie news item is Rachel Weisz. Of course, everyone knows her from the Mummy movies, the Brendan Fraser ones. Is set to portray. This is what happens when you don't double check your outline. Infamous movie star Elizabeth Taylor in an upcoming biopic called A Special Relationship. The film will focus on one aspect of Taylor's life that hasn't been depicted before: her works as an AIDS activist. The Special Relationship refers to her openly gay assistant, Roger Wall, a man who opened Taylor's world to those suffering from the disease, but also the societal homophobia. Of course, it would have been very easy to do a movie about Taylor's other relationships. She is obviously very well known for her 8 marriages, 2 to the same person, and of course the affair she had with Richard Burton when they were making Cleopatra, which in itself also bankrupted Fox back in the 60s, but that's a whole other thing that they're not going to talk about. So I like that they're doing this kind of little swerve. They're talking, you assume you see Elizabeth Taylor in the movie and you're like, oh, or someone portraying Elizabeth Taylor in the movie and you're like, oh, they're going to talk about how she got around in Hollywood, but that was not the case. I like they're doing kind of this, and Rachel Weisz is a wonderful actress. Obviously, she's been very good. Of course, last year she was in The Favorite, which got her nominated. Did she win? I can't remember if she won or not. I don't remember, but she was at least nominated, so there's that. So I think this is really cool. The movie does not have a director yet, but it will be written by Simon Balfoy, who wrote Slumdog Millionaire, 127 Hours, The Hunger Games: Catching Fire, Everest, and Battle of the Sexes. Battle of the Sexes, of course, was a biopic on Billie Jean King, so he has some experience in biopics, so there's that. Alright, let's move on to the bigger movie news items of the week. First one is Conjuring writers Chad and Carrie Haynes are set to develop and write a potential new franchise based on the famed New Orleans haunted house, the LaLaurie Mansion. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. The mansion has been closed to the public for nearly a century, and just for giggles, because apparently I didn't do too much research on the LaLaurie Mansion, but I did just enough, because I found out that Nicolas Cage, yes, that Nicolas Cage, privately bought the house in 2007 for a whopping $3.45 million, and then had to sell it 2 years later for $2.3 million, which I just found very interesting. But for those unfamiliar, including myself before this news broke, even though I was or have visited New Orleans, although I didn't do the ghost tour, which I'm kind of upset about, and I will definitely do when I try to go back. The owner of the house was a wealthy slave owner by the name of Madame Delphine LaLaurie, aka Madame Delphine LaLaurie, who, after her third husband left, she apparently quote-unquote snapped, and then in 1834 the house had a catastrophic fire. And the fire itself revealed something that was disturbing on more levels than one. It was that slaves were chained to their quarters, some with very gruesome details that I won't really get into. But if you want to know what those details, I mean, you can only imagine what those details were, hearing the fact that slaves were chained in their quarters in itself. The house was gutted after residents realized that what they were living next door to, and the exterior of the house is still there because, as I mentioned earlier, you can still see the house from the outside in city ghost tours in New Orleans. Now, of course, the Hayes brothers have experience with haunted houses. They, of course, like I mentioned, were the writers of the Conjuring series, and they are reportedly considering writing the script in the mansion itself, which will be interesting to see if the city even allows for that. The hope is that the stories will continue and consist of multiple movies on the house's terrifying history spreading over 2 centuries. The story of the movies spreading over 2 centuries, not the movies themselves spreading over 2 centuries, because that would be a lot of movies. But and I'm pretty sure we'd all be dead by then. But this is pretty interesting. Like I mentioned, I've never heard of the LaLaurie house. I think some of the very slim details that I read over the hauntings and over what happened in the house is it kind of probably would lend itself to a good movie, a good haunted house horror movie. And like I mentioned, if you're going to put that in the hands of anyone, why not the Haynes brothers? Because like I mentioned, they did the Conjuring movies, so why not them? I think it'd be pretty cool. So let's move on to the pretty much the last movie news item, the second and last movie news item of the week. Like I mentioned, it's a pretty slow week this week, especially at the time of this recording. So let's wind the clocks back just a little bit, back to earlier this year in February, to be more specific. It was announced that HBO's Game of Thrones showrunners and writers, David Benioff and D.B. Weisz, or Weisz, I always mispronounce the last name, were going to write a new series of Star Wars films centered outside of the main Skywalker storyline. However, there was never any story details, although there was rumors saying that it would be based off the Old Republic storyline. Of course, those were just rumors at that point, and still are, because we found out what the movie's actually about. But they were finishing up Game of Thrones, so we had to wait until we heard anything official. Then the duo signed a massive and very lucrative Netflix deal. So their involvement with Lucasfilms was kind of up in the air, because they signed this Netflix deal, but they were also still signed with Lucasfilms. So there was this kind of big, what's going to happen? So fast forward to this week. Earlier this week, of all things, B&W, I'm just going to say B&W because I don't want to keep saying their names over and over again, are now no longer involved. And the move kind of came out of nowhere. Their movie or movies would have focused on the idea of how the Jedi came to be. That was kind of what they were going to go with. However, they weren't fired like Phil Lord and Chris Miller with Solo, a Star Wars story. They weren't fired like Josh Trank, who was going to do an unknown Star Wars movie as well after his, very public defamation, we'll just put it that way, of Fantastic Four. No, it was because of their deal, really, with Netflix. So Variety has a more detailed breakdown of the events, and I will link that story from Variety in the description/show notes area if you want to go read it. It is highly worth the read just to hear the little tidbits that have come out. And it pretty much, but just to give you guys a lowdown, it pretty much sounded like Netflix wanted B&W exclusively. They didn't want to share. And it looks like they may have gotten their way with that. Now, Lucasfilm head Kathleen Kennedy, who has time and again, every now and then, has been known to be a little difficult, or a little, pushbacky, with some ideas. From the sounds of it, it sounded like maybe she's shot down a lot of the ideas that they brought up, and obviously it wouldn't be too surprising. She keeps bringing back Lawrence Kasdan, who admittedly, has helped out the Star Wars franchise for many, many years, but it sounded like there was a little bit of pushback for it. And she did come out when the news came out that they were leaving, that the door was open for them to return. And again, this has been going back and forth for a little bit. It sounds like from the news report that the departure's been in the works since August, maybe even September, because again, it sounded like Netflix wanted B&W exclusively, and there's just this real kind of tug of rope basically between them and Lucasfilm, and it sounds like maybe Netflix got their way. Again, I will link the story from Variety in the description/show notes area, and there's a bunch of other stuff. A Hollywood Reporter ran a report saying that maybe B&W left because of toxic fandom, that obviously the Game of Thrones fans have kind of all thrown at them, and toxicity of that, and they didn't probably want to deal with more toxic fandom with Star Wars series, because God knows there's toxic fandom in the Star Wars series too. Don't say there isn't, because I know there is. We've all seen it. But I don't know. It's kind of a shame, because look, was I a massive fan of the last season of Game of Thrones? No, I wasn't. Would I say it was complete and utter trash? No, I wouldn't, because people expect a lot of things, and this is true for everything. This isn't just true for Game of Thrones, for TV series. It's also true for the movie world. It's also true for Star Wars. It's true for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's true for a lot of things. When you have these big fandoms, when you have these big franchises, when you have these big TV shows, whatever, what have you, there's always going to be those fandoms that, even if it's just a little section of the fandom, that if they don't get what they want or what they fantasize about, then they're not going to like whatever is given to them. And they're going to complain, and they're going to moan, and they're going to cause a big uproar, and then they're going to attack the people who don't agree with them, and then they're going to attack the people that are actually involved in the series, and they're going to attack the actors who are just doing their jobs, and it happens. Unfortunately, it happens, and saying that it happens is not an excuse for them or for what you do and say to strangers on the internet. So I kind of feel bad for B&W for doing that. You know, there was this whole thing that, they left Game of Thrones and they rushed it because they wanted to go and do Star Wars right away. We don't know that. Not really. If that was the case, then okay, whatever. But, that's, to make assumptions like that out of the blue is just, it doesn't help. It doesn't help at all whatsoever, especially with those people who already complained. And I was in the camp for B&W. I wasn't necessarily defending them entirely, but I defended them enough to say that they gave us a show that we all loved, and that for a good chunk of time we never thought that would be made. And the fact that they were able to make it, and they were able to do what they did with the series on HBO and give it to us, the fans who fell in love with all these characters and fell in love with the show, that's really cool. And it almost kind of seems like everyone that's complaining is kind of being a little selfish and being a little bratty. And again, I'm not completely defending them of what they did with the last season of Game of Thrones, but I'm not going to throw them away like a piece of trash just because they gave us one bad season. And this is coming from a guy that watches pro wrestling. So I've seen the ups and downs of all that, of bad writing. Trust me, I have seen that. Not that I'm comparing Game of Thrones to pro wrestling at all whatsoever, but there you go. All right, let's move on before I dig my hole even bigger. So let's move on. That's it. Those are your movie news items. Those are your trailers. Like I mentioned, it was a very slow week. I'm making it up to you by giving you a JOJO Rabbit review at the end of the podcast. So let's try to get to that faster. So let's move on to this week's movie releases.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
So no real big limited releases. I do believe that The Lighthouse and JOJO Rabbit are probably still getting some expansions slowly but surely before they get their wide releases this month. So let's move on to this week's wide releases. And the first one is Arctic Dogs. It is an animated movie with Swifty the Fox, voiced by Jeremy Renner, who's not having a very good time publicly, discovers a devious plan by Otto Van Walrus, voiced by John Cleese, to drill beneath the Arctic surface to unleash enough gas to melt all the ice. With the help of his friends, Swifty and the gang spring into action to foil Otto's plan and save the day. The voice cast also includes James Franco, Heidi Klum, Laurie Holden, Alec Baldwin, Omar Skye, Michael Marsden, and Angelica Houston. The trailers have been pretty short. I've seen maybe like 2 commercials on air, and it's usually like at Nick at Night when I'm watching Friends. So probably not going to do that very well at the box office. The next wide release is Motherless Brooklyn, based off the novel of the same name. It is directed by Edward Norton, who also stars in the movie. Set against the backdrop of 1950s, Lionel, played by Norton, a lonely private detective afflicted with Tourette's syndrome, ventures to solve the murder of his mentor and only friend, played by Bruce Willis. Motherless Brooklyn co-stars William Dafoe, Leslie Mann, Gugu Mbatha-Raw, Michael Kenneth Williams, and Alec Baldwin. It's been getting some pretty decent reviews. I think it's mostly a mixed bag. From what I read, the novel itself isn't set in the 50s, so it's more of a directorial and narrative choice that Norton made to set the movie in the 50s. I'm not all convinced. I probably eventually will see it, but I'm not going to go see it right away. I think it's an interesting choice for Norton to play the kind of character that he is, and Bruce Willis, who plays the mentor in the movie, it looks like he's, I don't know if he's phoning it in. At least it doesn't look like he's phoning it in the trailer, so hopefully he doesn't phone it in the whole movie. So there is that. Alright, so the next wide release is Harriet, the extraordinary tale of Harriet Tubman's escape from slavery and transformation into one of America's greatest heroes, whose courage and ingenuity and tenacity freed hundreds of slaves and changed the course of history. Harriet Tubman is played by Cynthia Erivo in the movie. It also co-stars Leslie Odom Jr., along with a variety of other people in there. Most of them are kind of, not, I must say unknowns, but most of them probably be not names that you would know right away, right off the bat. So this one's been, I think Harriet was supposed to come out earlier this year and it got moved around. I want to say that was the case, but I don't know how I feel about Harriet, because I saw the trailer, and Harriet Tubman herself deserves a movie. Everything she has done, you know, the things she has done and the things she has ditched, she's not still alive. The things that she did are more than worthy of her getting her own movie. Although, I don't know how I feel about them turning Harriet Tubman into a, I don't want to say superhero, but kind of a, I mean, I guess in certain terms she is a superhero. But I don't know, like, how I feel, like, all the images we've seen of Harriet Tubman, we always see her, you know, not necessarily as someone who's going to pick up a gun and shoot Whitey. That's not the image that we get when we think of Harriet Tubman. We think of Harriet Tubman with the Underground Railroad and everything, and they do touch on the Underground Railroad in the movie, at least in the trailers. But never has she been depicted as I'm going to lead a slave uprising with, you know, all these freed slaves, and we're gonna shoot down all the slave owners and everyone they send to us. I don't know. It's really weird. I'm not saying the movie's gonna suffer from it, but it's just, the image of that is just a little weird for me to connect to. All right, so the last movie coming. Let's move on. This is a weird podcast this week. Just gonna put that out there. All right, let's talk about the last movie coming out, which is, of course, it's been, you know, promoted like crazy. It is Terminator Dark Fate. It is directed by Tim Miller, who of course directed Deadpool. Sarah Connor, played by Linda Hamilton, and a hybrid cyborg human played by Mackenzie Davis must protect a young girl played by newcomer Natalie Reyes from a newly modified liquid Terminator played by Gabriel Luna from the future. Dark Fate co-stars Diego Boneta, Edward Furlong, the returning Edward Furlong, and Arnold Schwarzenegger. The buzz for this has been pretty good, surprisingly, considering that the last Terminator movie was not good at all. But Terminator Dark Fate's been getting a lot of good buzz. It's saying it's the best Terminator since Terminator 2. They're saying that it's a good start for a new reboot to the franchise, if that's what they want to do, if they get the chance to. So I've been hearing a lot of good things about it online and from people that I trust. But it should be interesting to kind of see how the wider audience accepts this. I did not go watch it last night. That was my intention, to go watch it on Thursday, but that was not the case. But I'm going to go watch this weekend. It looks fine. I mean, it looks pretty good. It's nice to see Linda Hamilton back. If anything, that's going to probably be the saving grace for this movie, to have Sarah Connor once again played by Linda Hamilton back in the franchise. I think it's really cool. I've not read anything because I don't like things spoiled for me. I don't like reaching out for spoilers, so I don't know what kind of role Edward Furlong plays in this movie. But and Gabriel Luna and Mackenzie Davis, you got them in there, two great actors who are going to be, you know, if they weren't household names before, they're going to be household names now. So I think it's going to be pretty good. That is my hope for the Terminator Dark Fate. So those are your wide releases. Like I mentioned, it's Terminator Dark Fate, it's Motherless Brooklyn, Harriet, and Arctic Dogs. No real big limited releases. Like I mentioned, there may be some expansion releases for JOJO Rabbit and The Lighthouse. If not, then you'll have to wait, I think probably next week or the week after, when they'll come out officially. Obviously, I'll keep you guys updated on that. So let's, speaking of JOJO Rabbit, I mentioned it earlier and I mentioned it before. I was in LA last weekend, and I got the chance to see JOJO Rabbit in theaters, so here's my mini review.
Field Marshal JoJo, you're a top man. Prepare to leave the house.
Today you boys will be involved in such activities as war games, ambush techniques, and blowing stuff up.
I don't think I can do this.
Was? Of course you can.
When I was your age, I had an imaginary friend. Got me in so much trouble.
Kids, it's time to burn some books!
You're growing up too fast. 10-year-olds shouldn't be celebrating war and talking politics.
Heil Hitler. I wish more of our young boys had your blind fanaticism.
Did you know Jews can read each other's minds? But how would you know if you saw one? They could look just like us. Hi. You know what I am? Say it. A Jew. Gesundheit.
Sheesh, that was intense.
What am I going to do?
No idea.
Got it! I will
Burn
negotiate.
down the house and blame Winston Churchill. Or negotiate.
If I tell on you, you'll be in big trouble.
They'll never win. Love is the strongest thing in the world.
Your mother took me in. She's kind. She treats me like a person.
You two seem to be getting on well.
She doesn't seem like a bad person. I'm the enemy. You're not a Nazi, Jojo. You're a 10-year-old kid who likes dressing up in a funny uniform and wants to be part of a club. Yogi? Oh, God. Nothing makes sense anymore. Yeah, I know. It's definitely not a good time to be a Nazi.
Jojo, played by Roman Griffin Davis, a young boy in the Hitler Youth, finds out his mother, Rosie, played by Scarlett Johansson, is hiding a Jewish girl named Elsa, played by Thomasin McKenzie, in their home, all while Jojo interacts with his imaginary friend, Adolf Hitler, played by writer-director Taika Waititi. The movie co-stars Sam Rockwell, Rebel Wilson, Alfie Allen, Archie Yates, Stephen Merchant, and is actually based off a novel, not of the same name. It's actually, I believe it's called Caging Skies. And something I found out after I watched JOJO Rabbit and started looking up at reviews and stuff, the movie is based off the book. However, it's a more humorous take on the book, and it only really adapts about half of it. So the book and the movie are very, very much different. The movie plays a lot more to Waititi's strengths, whereas the book is a lot more, let's just say, real. Let's put it that way. It's more real. So the movie itself, like I mentioned, it's played more to Waititi's take. And if you don't know anything that Waititi has done besides Thor Ragnarok, he's directed What We Do in the Shadows, which is, I think, probably the only other movie that really everyone knows about him. But he also directed The Hunts for Wilder People, which is really, really funny, which is kind of the only one I've seen. I know he directed something else, but for the life of me, I can't remember what it was, and it's probably because I hadn't seen it. But he's a very great director. His humor is for everyone, really. He's not one of those directors where it's like, if you don't get the humor, you're not gonna find it funny. Like, no, Waititi knows how to tap into the humor well, as in like a water well, very well. Probably could have used another example for that, but like I mentioned, it's a weird podcast this week. But it's humorous throughout. JOJO Rabbit is humorous throughout, and sometimes the jokes are there just for the sake of having a joke. The humor is kind of scattered a lot. It's not scattered, but it's kind of in every scene that there is. But the movie is filled with dramatic and very real, heart-tugging scenes. Scenes that are very real. It could be tonal whiplash for some people, but given the reality of how things really were at that time, and given the reality of this kind of stuff really did happen, it would make sense why Waititi would make that decision to have this very humorous thing. I mean, there's a kid in the Hitler Youth whose imaginary friend is Adolf Hitler. Let's put it that way.
Poor Jojo. What's wrong, little man?
Hi, Adolf.
Want to tell me about that rabbit incident? What was all that about?
They wanted me to kill it. I'm sorry. I couldn't.
Don't worry about it. I couldn't care less.
But now they call me a scared rabbit.
Let them say whatever they want. People used to say a lot of nasty things about me. Oh, this guy's a lunatic. Oh, look at that psycho. He's gonna get us all killed. I'll let you in on a little secret. The rabbit is no coward. The humble little bunny faces a dangerous world every day, hunting carrots for his family, for his country. My empire will be full of all animals. Lions, giraffes, zebras, rhinoceroses, octopuses, rhinoctopuses, even the mighty rabbit. Cigarette?
Oh, no thanks. I don't smoke.
Let me give you some really good advice. Be the rabbit. The humble bunny can outwit all of his enemies. He's brave and sneaky and strong. Be the rabbit.
Jojo! Are you alright, Jojo? Who are you talking to? Nobody.
And then we're dealing with the real things that are going on in Germany. And at least it's really just a small town that we're following, or pretty much where all the movie is set place in this very small town. It would make sense why Waititi would make that decision. It would make sense for him to be, okay, here's this very humorous take on everything that's going on, but then there are these very real scenes and these very real dramatic scenes. And I'm not going to get into it because I want to keep this as spoiler free as possible, as much as I can. But there is actually a very few particular moments in the movie where there's kind of like these jokes leading up to it, and then it gets deadly serious, and it's almost like you just sink to the bottom of your chair. And I applaud Waititi for doing that, because it's easy for him to do all the humor, but when it gets down to it, you have to remember this is a movie set during the war. This is a movie set during the war in Germany. And for him to do all that, to have all these humorous scenes, and to just swipe the rug from underneath us and give us these very real scenes, I applaud him for doing that, because I think, and the fact that he can keep that balance, not many directors can do that. Especially with the material that we have right here, but he is able to do that, and I applaud him for doing that. And a lot of the movie is thanks to the cast. And the reason the movie is so good is because of the cast. Roman Griffin Davis pretty much keeps the movie on his shoulders. I don't know why did I say that weird? But his JoJo is very cool. He's very devoted to the cause, and it leads to some pretty good scenes between him, Scarlett Johansson, and even Mackenzie. I almost said Mackenzie Davies. Thomasin Mackenzie, because his interactions with his mother are like, he's fully devoted to Germany and to Hitler's cause and to everything, while Scarlett Johansson's Rosie, his mother, is more devoted to having the war end because she thinks war is dumb and she doesn't want this war to keep going. She doesn't want her son to be part of this Hitler Youth and to hate this group of people he's never met before. The people, of course, being Jewish people.
Why so happy?
Things are changing. The Allies have taken Italy, France will be next, and soon the war will be over.
God damn it! Why does that make you happy? You hate your country that much?
I love my country. It's a war I hate. It's pointless and stupid, and the sooner we have peace, the better.
Oh, the war will end. We will crush our enemies into dust, and when they are destroyed, we shall use their graves as toilets.
Okay, no more politics. Dinner is neutral ground. This table is Switzerland. Let's eat.
And the fact that he's so devoted to this cause, it kind of scares her a little bit. And she's always trying to, keep him as a kid. She's always having these very humorous moments, and she kind of is for the lack of a better word, and you can make this argument that she kind of is the heart of the movie. She is the heart and soul of the movie, keeping JoJo trying to keep JoJo as a kid and not as a kid in the Hitler Youth. So I applaud both of them, and they have great chemistry together. They have great scenes together. Thomasin McKenzie, who I've seen in really only one other thing, which is Leave No Trace, with her and Ben Foster. If you haven't seen that movie, I highly recommend you do. I think that was kind of her breakout scene. I don't want to say that was her first movie, but that was kind of, I think, the thing that really introduced her to everyone. But she was great in that, and she's great here as Elsa, the Jewish girl that's in that's being kept hidden, and she's great in here too. She doesn't have, I want to say she doesn't have too much to do. She does have a lot to do in the movie because obviously she plays a very big role in it, but a lot of her moments are very small moments, where Waititi just pretty much sets the camera down and there's one particular scene where it really just feels like Waititi just kept the camera on her, and he told Roman Griffith Davis just do his lines, and he was just gonna keep the camera on Mackenzie, and just what she's able to do with that is great. I'm not gonna get into it because it's a little spoilery, but she's great. She's great in it, and I really wish that we'll get to see more Mackenzie. I think she's in the new Edgar Wright movie. What was it, Last Night in Soho, or A Night in Soho, that comes out next year? So I think she's in that. So I'm pretty sure that we're going to be hearing a lot more of Thomasin McKenzie, and I hope we do, because she's a great actress. And like I mentioned, she has these little small moments in the movie. I mean, they're big scenes, but and she's a main character. She's pretty much the main actress in the movie, but there's these small moments in the movie that she's fantastic in, and she's great. Sam Rockwell, who plays Captain Klenzendorf, I think that's how they pronounced it. He's like a general. He's like a captain in the army, and then he gets demoted, so he has to train all these little kids, and then he gets even more demoted when JoJo suffers an accident. So he's just stuck in an office the whole time. But Sam Rockwell is reliable in anything you put him in, and he's even more reliable in this. And he has a great scene near the end of the movie where, again, it's going back to what I mentioned with Waititi. It's these humorous moments, and then he just pulls the rug right under you, and he gives you this very real scene, and snaps you back to reality. Like, no, this was maybe what happened in these situations. So he's very good in that. Alfie Allen's in there. Of course, he played Theon in Game of Thrones. He's really not given too much to do. He's kind of in the background. He's kind of Sam Rockwell's character is kind of right-hand man in the movie, so he has these very comedic moments every now and then. Stephen Merchant really only has one scene in the movie. He plays a Gestapo official in probably one of the most tense scenes in the entire movie. It's still, again, very humorous, but very, very real. So he and Stephen Merchant's one of those guys where, yeah, he can be really dead set funny, or he can be really dead set serious, and he toes the line in the scene, which is very, very cool. And then Rebel Wilson, she's kind of just there. She really is not given too much to do, and she's kind of the outlier of the cast. It's kind of just Rebel Wilson being Rebel Wilson, but thankfully she's not in the movie too much, and not anything against her, but the movie's not really about her. It's really more about JoJo and the rest of the cast. So the cast is great, and then of course Taika Waititi as imaginary Adolf Hitler, again, humorous. One particular scene where where it's like, oh no, that's right, he's playing Adolf Hitler, and he has this scene where he's kind of just talking down the JoJo a little bit, and at that point they kind of already know that, or JoJo already knows that, Elsa's already up in the attic hiding. So, or not the attic, it's kind of like this weird little cubby space in one of the rooms, but it's like, oh yeah, he's playing Hitler. So he has this one scene where he's going off and he's trying to get JoJo back on the right path. Because JoJo, even though he's a kid and he's devoted, he sees Elsa as a human being sometimes. And there's these little small moments where they're having, they're getting to know each other a little bit, even though Elsa is kind of playing along with the, the fact that, Jews are monsters. And they're very, very humorous scenes, and they're very good scenes, and they're very funny scenes, and very heartwarming scenes. But at the end of the day, JoJo Rabbit's really kind of this coming of age story, and it's a great coming of age story. It's funny, it's humorous. Maybe some of the jokes won't work for you, but some of them will. It's very real at times, and like I mentioned, those real scenes really just, they get to you, and they really do get to you. And it's overall, it's great. The cast is great. Taika Waititi has done it again. I won't say it's a perfect movie. I think it does have some little missteps every now and then, but for the most part, it's really, really good. I would highly recommend it to you. If I had to give it a score, I'd probably give it a 4 or 4.5 out of 5. I'm kind of teetering between those two, but I really, really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun, and I would highly recommend. I will probably most likely see it again once it opens up wide, especially here in the Chicagoland area. So yeah, that's my review of JoJo Rabbit for you guys, and that's all I got. So that's it. That's the podcast for you guys. Thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast this week. It was very weird. I'm a little rusty. I haven't done it in a few weeks, so I apologize for the missteps here every now and then. So, but thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you guys for sticking it out for me on this podcast. And all the links to everything are down below in the description / show notes area. Trailers, that Variety story that I talked about earlier, about David Benioff and D.B. Weiss leaving the Star Wars franchise. What else is down there? Twitter, Instagram, WordPress, where I do written reviews. I'll probably do a written review for Terminator Dark Fate this weekend, hopefully. What else is down there? A bunch of other stuff's down there. Just, if you listen enough, So if you're listening to this on YouTube, make sure to give me a like, subscribe. Let me know what your favorite part of the podcast was. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, really appreciate it if you guys leave me a review, or at least a rating. I know sometimes reviews, you don't want to write a review. Maybe if you just want to leave me a rating, I'd appreciate the rating. It doesn't have to be 5 stars. It can be 4 stars. It can be 3 stars. Don't give me 1 or 2. I know this podcast sucks sometimes. I know it. Just don't give me 1 or 2. What else? What else is down there? Stitcher, if you're listening to this on Stitcher, highly appreciate you guys for listening over here as well. So yeah, that's it. Thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast this week. I highly appreciate it. I will return next week for another edition of the podcast. And like I mentioned, hopefully you guys have hopefully had a safe, fun Halloween and Dia de los Muertos. And yeah. So that's it. Hopefully you guys enjoy your week. Have a fun, safe weekend. And as always, be good people and go watch some movies.
Whoop whoop! Yeah! Give it up! Movies!